Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all having a great week or weekend, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. Oh no, I hope that doesn't sound like an email. Anyway, welcome to the ACMK podcast. This is our very first episode. So just to introduce the podcast, and ACMK is the Association of Construction Managers of Kenya. So we are going to be learning more and more about ACMK, what we do, what's the community about, what's the mission, what kind of activities do we have throughout the podcast. So stay tuned for that. We are also going to be talking about everything construction in this podcast. And when you hear construction, it does not mean you have to be in the construction industry for you to relate to us. We're going to be doing episodes on probably you want to build a home and you need to understand what kind of professions do you need, what services do you require. So we'll be getting into that. If you're a student and just wondering how do you make yourself ready for the market, how do you brand yourself, what kind of skills do you need, what do you expect when you come out here, stay tuned as we'll be giving that content also. But for starting, we are going to be discussing about the construction industry. Basically, we're just going to have an introduction into the construction industry. We're going to have an introduction into our construction project management. What is that? Who is that? What do we do? And all that. And we are going to be getting more details on what ACMK is. So to help me with that conversation, I have my dear friends over here. I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Alvin.
Thank you very much, people of the world of the construction environment. My name is Alvin Mushai. I am a construction manager by profession, but I also have a background in accounting. So to follow the money, understand the construction. I can probably say a bit about who I am as an individual.
Yes, that would be
because
helpful.
I mean, for you to be able to work very well in the industry, you need to have a course. So I run, I swim, I cycle. I am a triathlete. I am also a rotaractor and also a Toastmaster. So it's a whole, all works towards making me a better construction manager.
Thank you, Alvin.
Thank you very much.
Okay, she called me Kate. Hi everyone, Catherine Maina. I am also a construction manager by profession with over, let's say, almost 10 years of experience, and currently practicing with a project management consultancy by the name Turner & Townsend. And not to borrow the script, also a rotaractor. I run, I hike. Yeah, so that's a little about me.
Okay.
And so excited to be part of this. I know you will not have had many construction management podcasts, so here we are.
Okay. Actually, I don't think there is any podcast that's purely on construction management. Most of them are from the US, UK, and their ways do not really marry with what we do in Kenya. So this is one of the first. And their introductions have made mine sound so shallow, but don't worry. We are going to be with you for like so many more episodes. So you're going to learn more about me as we go along. So we'll get right into it. We've all mentioned that we are construction project managers. So just to understand how you got into the construction industry, how you got into the degree, is it something you had planned on doing? Did you know about construction management before you started, or how did you get yourself into construction?
All right. Wow. So this takes me back to how many years ago? Well, a lot of years ago. I actually wanted to be a quantity surveyor because for me it was the numbers, and I used to do well in maths and physics. So that was a starting point, but didn't meet the cutoff point. So construction management was a really good option, especially when I discovered you actually get to interface with all these other professionals. So your quant surveyor is a person who does your numbers, but essentially your construction manager is a person who interfaces with all these other professions. Yeah, so I did construction management in the University of Nairobi. And from there on, I have worked with a contractor. I have even worked with a joinery company. So these are the people who make your furniture and woodwork, and even a developer. But currently now with a consultancy firm. Yeah. So it's been quite a journey, and I know there is more to it, as we'll possibly delve into more now and even in later episodes. But it's so vast, and I'm so glad that the management aspect doesn't just sit within a site per se. Yeah, so that's basically the background. Okay, interesting. Alvin?
Mine is more of more interesting. It's actually quite interesting how I ended up in the construction field, because my first interaction with the project was I was barely 3 years old, and my father was today they're called like a window contractor. He was doing installing tins somewhere in Nairobi. So that was my first interaction with the construction space. So it's been a journey I've been involved from since I was a child. So gradually, at that time, I was just seeing, enjoying, marveling at the building itself. I was a child, but then growing up, at some point when I was in class 6, I got to realize, over the weekend, instead of staying at home and watching Club Kiboko, my dad used to carry me to sites. So I became a storekeeper while I was young. I hope this doesn't get him arrested for child labor. I mean, it's been years, but yeah, so I started that early. And because now the family is more construction oriented, I've been through the space supporting him and filling BOQ. So I knew a bit about the industry from when I was a very young person. So even right after finishing Form 4, off the bat, I knew like I was either going to be a QS or a construction manager. The options, the alternatives weren't very, I didn't have a lot of options. I didn't know anything else. So I ended up right after Form 4, I did my CPAs, and then I went to, during the break, I was at a construction site working for a contractor. So that's how I joined. So this is even right before joining campus. And then now in campus, I did construction management, enjoyed through and through. And then finishing school, worked with an EPC contractor. So this is for the non-construction people. So EPC is what you call like design and build. Yeah. So engineering, procurement, and construction. So I worked with a design and build contractor for a bit, and then I ended up in consultancy. Got to work with also a big consultancy firm like Tan & Townsend, which is Meso MR. So that's basically, and now I'm still within the construction consultancy space.
Can we say he's born and bred
a
construction manager?
I'm just happy like we don't have the usual story of, Jab just placed me into construction management. I feel like we both made some intentional choices to be in construction. Because for me, I think I went to the university to do industrial chemistry.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, and then I started interacting with Kate and her other friend was my cousin, also doing construction management. And 1 month into the industrial chem, I was like, I feel like this is more interesting because it's still management, but more tuned into the construction space. It sounded new for me, coming from a place where I only knew architect, engineer, QS. So now to come in and learn there's a new other space that I could dive into, I was like, okay, let's shift. So that's how I shifted to construction management. So it seems like we all made very intentional decision to go into construction management. So this should be interesting. Actually. But you've mentioned you worked for some general contractor. You mentioned EPC. So maybe you can just dive into making people understand what does the built environment consist, because most people hear construction, they obviously know about the architect, they obviously know about engineer, they know about a contractor. But there are so many other players into the construction industry or the built environment that most of our viewers may not be aware of. So if we could just give a breakdown of who do you think are the main players in the construction industry or in the built environment?
The construction industry is quite diverse in the sense that, of course, there's your traditional main consultants, which is, of course, the architect and the engineers. But for you to have a structure or a building, you need to think of it from having nothing until having actually the building come into place. So if you have nothing, you start with coming up with a design. So that's where you have your architect, you have your engineer. And then now for the engineer, there are different types of the engineers. Yeah. Again, for the non-construction, you have the engineer who deals with the structure, the box. And then now you have the engineer who makes that this structure has light, has power, the toilets are working, there's water. So now we call them mechanical, electrical, and public life, public health, yes, MEP, and fire, public health and fire engineers. So now that's the major, like if you're looking at it from a design aspect. So those are the main, you can say the main, and then once you have the shell up, now you have the next level of someone called an interior designer. So this is a person who makes the space the orientation of the spaces, how does the space look, the look and feel. But then also there's the difference between an interior designer and also an interior decorator. Most people usually confuse the two, because now the interior designer is more about the space, about how the space looks like, the functionality. Then now your interior decorator is no more into what kind of curtains are you having, if you're having your light, those small, the nitty gritty, the kind of carpets.
If I want to furnish my Airbnb and just change everything and revamp it, do I go to an interior decorator, do I go to an architect, or do I go to an interior designer?
Lesson of the day, there's an interior decorator and designer. I'll leave that to Alvin too.
So who do I go to?
It depends. Again, it depends on the nature of the space you got. If you found for the construction space, you have a place that is like, you have the grey box.
Yeah.
The grey box, which is just the building, without the final color of paints. Like if I just borrow from the space that you're currently in, there's one wall that has a grey paint, there's one wall that has a purple, there's white. So when you're getting a space that is like this, you get an interior decorator, because all you're doing is not putting in the
furniture,
the soft aspects of it. But if you find the paint, the walls just have the plaster, which is just what comes before the paint. At that point, you need an interiors architect or interior designer, because now they will guide you on this wall. You can have your paint to look like in a particular way. This area you can have your joinery and cabinets, your cabinets in a fancy looking, some nice ways. So that's a kind of, so to answer your question, depending on the nature of the space, that's when you make the decision.
Okay. Do all your projects have an interior designer? Because I feel like sometimes we just have the architect do all the design in terms of spaces and everything, and then now if it's for sales, that's when you have more people coming to do the staging, not more the design. So at what point do people decide, do I go for an architect, do I go just for the do I need an additional?
Let me say, sometimes you can have your architect double up as the interior designer as well, as long as they have an understanding of the interiors of the space to the point of those final furnishings and fittings.
Okay. Yeah. So based on what you're looking for in the experience of your architect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Landscape. I feel like once you mentioned the interior architect, you mentioned the architect, and there's the landscape architect, which is someone I don't think most people are aware of. So maybe, how often do you use a landscape architect in your projects?
Have you used one, Alvin?
Weirdly enough, unfortunately, I've never got to interact in a project that has a landscape architect as an.
Okay. As I see it, it's a much needed profession, especially when you get to learn the behinds of it, because biophilia in itself is, a specialty. So you don't just plant grass. People have had frustration with grass. As simple as it is. Like sometimes, look at was it Uhuru Highway? Kidero grass. Yeah. So essentially, so that goes into the essence of, I think, every profession that is purely being taught in school and people are trained on. There's a best practice for it and there's a profession for it, and it's for a reason. Otherwise, you hand it to anyone, and I know we'll get into the challenges of CM. You hand it into anyone, they don't understand it, you don't get it.
It becomes rough,
and then maybe just to add on to the built environment, so just looking from the outside, I know we have tackled now the inside of design.
The consultant.
I think it's, as the name suggests, so the built environment, so anything that, involves about building or, taking shape. So it could even be your roads, natural resources like in the quarries and the like. So these are people in the built environment, I'd say. And even the people who are building roads and railway. So it goes all the way to even the people who check whether the soil is stable. So it's the inside and outside. So it carries a lot of professions and people along the way.
Yeah, that's true.
We also have urban planners.
Yeah.
We have the county for approvals. I feel like we need a whole
that's
1 hour just to discuss.
I was actually looking at it
the approvals.
Because if you look at it, like I started with the building, But the truth of the fact is, you start with what's below the building. So that's where you have your geotech, your geotechs,
Yeah,
your
surveyor.
surveyors. Recently, I got to interact in a project which needs air quality surveys. So
What kind of project is that? Okay.
but it's a whole diverse. You have to start from the below. Then also now we've dealt with the consultants. We even haven't spoken about the people who actually build, because that's a whole
The
other-
artisans, yeah, exactly.
And
the different kind of
contractors,
contractors.
And even facilities, like the people who take, well, in simple terms, your caretakers. That's
the
that's
property
facilities
managers,
management, property
facility
management. Yeah.
It's a, but that just gives people an idea that it's so diverse. There's so much. If anyone has a passion in the built environment, there's so much that you need to consider. There's so many. We have the HSC people we've not even mentioned, right? So it's so diverse, because you're saying landscape architecture about the grass, but from what I've seen, they give you insight even on your levels and your embankments, because you don't want. Do you remember that Peponi project we had that was so like a landscape architect, someone who can tell you this kind of embankment is going to hold with grass only, this one will not hold, this one you need lattice block, this one you need what. But you see now, most people, I think, like you said, under the challenges, will see that most people want to get the one person who do it all. You just want to go to an architect or an engineer and expect they'll handle all aspects, and you end up with a lot of substandard work, because I'm loving how specialized things are getting. It's not gotten to the school yet, but outside here, people are really specializing
Shaping
into
the
niches
practice.
and just taking, like, for example, mine is only on ventilation, or mine is only on insulation. So I'm loving that now the market is getting a lot of specialized people who can deal with specific niches. So I think as we go along, we're going to get more into details, but that thank you, that gives us a foundation of what the built environment is all about. So like we mentioned when I was starting, this is an ACMK podcast, and for ACMK, it's an association for project managers, and currently I'm sitting in as the vice chair. The reason I'm saying this is to introduce the next subtopic we're going to do, which is just diving more into construction management itself. What is construction managers? What do we do? You can run us through a day or a week in your in your profession. What does it entail to be a construction manager? Because a client will ask, I have the architect who's designing, I have the engineers, I have my contractors, so why do I need a construction manager? What is your role? What do we do on a day-to-day basis?
Good. So essentially, as the name suggests, your construction manager manages resources.
Yeah.
And resources will vary from so many things. And I think to start off, in a project, there is a project owner who is essentially the person who is want to realize their interest there. It could be a building, it could be the government building, the roads. Yeah. So the project owner has a lot of interest in that. And you're as a manager, as a construction manager, you're managing the resources within that project. So resources will vary from the people themselves, actually. So all these professions we are talking about. Then there is also the aspect of time.
Yeah.
I know for any typical project, there's an end to it.
Yeah.
So there's someone who is looking after that time, seeing that stage 1 is done, stage 2 is done, and so on and so forth. Then there is also cost. That's a heavy one. So there's all these aspects. There's also quality. There's a lot of management areas that a project manager need to have their eyes and ears on. So that's just to name but a few. I know, Alvin, you would like to add some more.
Yeah, I think I'll just probably rope into those people who are interacting with construction from a curiosity point of view. So I'll want to make it a bit more relatable in the sense that I'll say most of us have either eaten a pizza, want to eat a pizza, or enjoy eating pizza. So pizza, it's if you just look at it, it's one solid for the Kikuyus in the house, it's one solid chapati, or for the Kenyans in the house, it's one solid chapati. So if you look at the chapati, the pizza, it has the bread, it has the different accompaniments in terms of like the meat, the different flavors, and all those things. You have your pineapples, people of pizza on pineapples on pizza, but it has one thing, which is it has the cheese. So without the cheese, your pizza will just be, if you flip over the pizza, all the condiments fall out. So for now to bring it back home, the role of a construction manager is that cheese, because without you, you're the integrator of all the different stakeholders, all the makeup. Your role is the integrator of the delivery process. So basically, you're not the architect, you're not the designer, you're not the QS, you're not the cost owner, you're not the client. So this project is not yours.
Yeah.
You're not the MEP engineer. So all these. So the architect is more or less like the bread. Then you have your pineapples on pizza. You have your pineapples as the different consultants, the different stakeholders, and then now you have the cheese.
On the pineapple.
we'll have a poll at the end.
Okay, digesting the pizza still.
But you understand the context.
Yeah.
So our role is more of an integrator. You bring all the stakeholders from the government. It's your role to make sure that whatever is being built aligns to the different standards and all that. It's your role to bring the architects and the engineers together. You make sure that the client's vision, the pizza, it's quality pizza.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of analogy I'm thinking about, because that's the main role of a construction manager. You don't own design, you don't own cost, you don't own the project,
You don't do the actual building.
You don't do the actual building.
Yeah.
But you're critical to make sure that all these different stakeholders, all these particular individuals align to making sure that this project, that this pizza is delivered appropriately. So now the pizza is a project. That's why I look at it as we are not construction managers, because construction managers sort of limits you to
Just
being
the
on site,
construction bit.
but you're the construction project manager. So you're supposed to have an end-to-end, a sort of like a 360 perspective of the delivery of the project, all the way from the start, from inception, all the way till the final delivery, and even end use. Like when you're thinking through the process of the delivery, you're looking at it from end to end. Yeah, so basically that's it. And then you're now putting it now on the day-to-day basis. Our role is usually more of ensuring that processes in each of these items are being followed in the right way. If it's in design stage, the architect needs to follow the right process to make sure that the designs have been done.
Yeah.
You're supposed to coordinate with the MEP guys, the structural engineer, your civils, your landscape, that process is being followed, so that you don't start with architectural and then you go and build and then we realize we need a plumber, so you come back and start redesigning. Understand? So you're the process. So that's in design. Now during construction, again, it's the same thing. Your involvement in the project is to make sure that when the contractor is building, doesn't do walling and then your wall don't have the mortar. That's a process. It's a minute process, but it's still a process. If it's styling, in a washroom, the tiles have to be. So you're a process. You're the process delivery. You don't do all these things, but you're key for that the processes that have been agreed upon align. And then now the first role is, for my take, is the integrator of delivery. So that's the pizza analogy, the processes, and then so that's processes and controls. And then the last thing is people management. That's our, I mean, all these aside, you need people to deliver the project from the client. The client is a person you need to manage. The consultants are great individuals that you need to work with and make sure that the contractor is now a whole other
where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. So all these are people. So
into that, because I feel like that's the one critical. When you were going to school, they taught us about financial management, project planning, contract management, HSC, site management, all great things, all things that you really need for you to be, like, for you to run a project. But the people management bit, I feel like we should have dived that, like, very deeply into that, because at the end of the day, like, I really like the pizza analogy. I never thought of it, but it makes so much sense what we do. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you need all these people to deliver. You need all these people to stick to the timeline. You need all these people to work together. So at the end of the day, you are really, really just, I can't believe the number of times or hours I spend on the phone.
If you look at the Project Management Institute, for example, since PMI, like, the profession is, let's say, started off from the early 20th century. Even for them, they have had to revise their, their teaching, because they are now bringing people to the front. I think everyone wanted to stick to the processes and the tools and the controls, but then they realize it starts with the people.
Because if you need,
it's a people's job.
I think they should tell us that. Some of us may want to reconsider, because it's, as the PM, it's all about ensuring the three pillars that Kate mentioned. There's the quality, there's cost, and there's time, right? And then in the middle you have your scope, right? How do you get that done as the PM? You can have the best project manual in the world, you can have the best contract management style, or even the best contract machinery and everything, but if the people involved are not willing to just do their end, it won't work. So how do you manage that? What are some of the skills or the things that you've learned for management of the people, especially in the construction? Just to give an overview, these are people who really believe in what they do. As the architect, I'm the design. They feel like this is my project. It's my design, right? As the engineer, they're equally feeling like I bring the technicalities to this. The case is like the numbers don't lie. The client is that this is my project, guys. So you are there. You can't have an interest on any of these guys. Your interest is the project, and you have to get them to cooperate and coordinate. And so how do you do that? What's the best?
actually you've mentioned let me just put to context what's the importance of people in a project. And you see the most, one of the things where I love what I do on a day-to-day basis.
That's great to hear.
I enjoy construction. It's because in one day you will interact with a billionaire, like the owner of the project owner, and that same day you will interact with a fundi at the lowest level. So construction gives you the way where you interact with the society at all different levels in its own different and its own unique way. So putting into context, we focus mostly on the consultants. I'll give you a project where an example of a challenge. So I'm jumping the gun of a challenge I faced.
Yeah, I think we can just mix it up at
where we're doing it. It was a high-rise building, so 17 floors, 2 basements, and we are having a challenge of we're doing plaster finishes works. So we have 5 blocks, and then those the tower crane. So there's a tower crane, and then so the tower crane is what takes the materials from ground to the different levels. So for us, we were very stressed tracking, and was used to even the elevator wasn't working at some points, so I'd literally go up the 17 floors, but trying to track with my notes and everything. Plaster, is this room done? Is this room done? But then it wasn't working. Like we'd always falter on our we'd promise a client this floor will be ready by this day. That day comes, we haven't. And then looking back now, getting to interact with people, the project wasn't the reason we were faltering on timelines. Can you guess what the challenge was?
People are going up 17 floors. There is time.
Could be anything in the construction.
You know what the challenge was? Is the particular subcontractor had the main contractor had given that job to had subcontracted on another level, where he's given this floor to be done plaster by this team, and this other floor to be done by another team, and this other floor to be done by another team. And then
like
it was an amazing plan. But then there's one thing we hadn't factored in. So the tower crane person at the top, who's just one, was the biggest hindrance, because he used to get bribed by one of the fundis, one of the teams, to make sure that they get the materials, so the sand, the paint, the cement, earliest. So you'd get to 10 a.m. There's a team that hasn't gotten the materials. So that's why the importance of people. So now, Kate, how do you handle your people situation?
How do you even deal with that?
Eyes and ears on the ground, exactly. I'd say, I think for me, emotional intelligence, because when people get together, I think everyone has different interests. The architect wants the most space. The structural engineer wants the building to be structurally stable. So, but at the end of the day, everyone is accountable to a certain role in the project. So first of all, holding them accountable, but also, understanding what their interests are. So for instance, if someone wants this, you're like, I know we want this and this, but if you look at the timing, or if you look at the cost, then we are deviating off the project. So first of all, understanding your people. And then one thing I have also learned, like, these are people are people with families. So sometimes someone doesn't come to a meeting, or is, late for a couple of meetings. It's good to find out, like, what's going on. Well, not to get into the business of their lives there, but it's good to have that interpersonal, relation. So I think that's part of the emotional intelligence. And then you realize, by the way, even in terms of age differences, that speaks to emotional intelligence. Like, you don't like, different age sets want being to be addressed differently. So it's essentially understanding your team, and then adapting the project to the tune of the team or the people.
It's interesting that you brought the age, because that was literally my main point on challenges as a CM, because you're trying to really just get the job done. You know the timelines, you know the scope, you know the extent. So you're trying to really just explain why we need to get this done this way and this way. And then I normally experience two kind of responses. Someone will just tell you, I've been doing this longer than you were born. And I'm like, that is
bluntly.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's where emotional intelligence comes in, because in the moment, if you don't have the right mindset, that can go south real quick. And by the time you're dealing with that whole situation, it's been a week. The rains are here, we can't excavate. Well, I think I'm doing another episode on conflict, and we'll get into how to manage that. But so how do you relate with the difference? Because let's be honest, we'll have a 60-year-old,
I know,
70, and we'll have a 20-year-old. And now it's easier if they assume you're an intern, but if you're actually the project manager,
the lead,
asking the question, how do you balance that without also undermining your own position, because you can't just be cute and nice. So where's the balance?
This reminds me of a phone call when I got started. So at the age, like, you're young and you have an architect who has practiced for so long, and then they're like, why do you always want things done so fast? But then I'm like, we have gone through this was supposed to have been done by this and that date. When do you think you would be done? Sometimes it's more, you want to hear their part, yes, but you also want to bring them back to the table, to making the pizza. It's time. The cheese is getting cold.
Actually, I can just bring also some bit of context. One thing she said about understanding the aspect of how to balance the age narrows down to appreciating that people are people. Like, people.
I need more on that.
Exactly. I want to put it more into context, in the sense that people have lives. They get angry, they get hungry, they have a lot of things going on. So if you have that, as if let's say you're picking your call to call a QS or an engineer, the first thing will be, of course, you're very angry because they're delayed with something for 2 or 3 days. The first thing will be, how's it going? Are you well? There's something. So being able to take them first as individuals, as
human.
people, as human, and then now the particular objective. But if you put it that, I say this thing has to be done by this time, in Mjengo, you see, as she said, Mjengo construction, Mjengo is a place where information is key. Basically, as PMs, if one of the roles, as I was saying about the aspect of integrating, we are basically also just conduits of information. So at time, you don't want to be the post office where something has to come there, so you give. So you're about how to manage how information flows. And how information flows, there's some people, if you're angry and you're always down on pushing stuff, you'll never get information. And if you don't have information, how can you be able to track your cost? How do you track your quality? How do you track your time? It's impossible. So having that you understand people are people, and if you're talking to someone older, the same way you can reach out to an old mom or on the road, or an old guka, you treat them that way. If someone is experienced with over, like, there's a contractor who's been practicing, he's an electrical contractor, you probably have interacted, he's been practicing double my life. So my age times 2. So that's his work experience. And then now, of course, he's also been living. So if you go with an angry or a very condescending tone to that individual, you'll never
Yeah.
get anything done. But if you tell him, hey, you like approach them as who they are, it works most often than not. Yeah.
It sounds like as CMs we don't really have any room for outburst, and because it's very normal for an architect to come into a meeting and just bang his head and say this is wrong, this is what. But as a CM, you don't get to do that. It's the emotional intelligence comes in real quick, because like you're saying, information, how you relay information, it's all about the information, it's all about the communication, the timeline. So it's I think they need to put that in, because it's a
Yeah, I'd say it's the value add, because you know, the architect is there because they can design, the engineer similarly because you know they will design structurally, but you also need to be there to see that it's getting done. Everyone is bringing to the table what they ought to bring to the table.
The bread.
So at the end of the day, everyone is there because they need to do something, but time to time, like, you need to bring people to the interest of the project, to the goal. This is what we need to do.
Okay, so it's all about communication and meetings and
A lot of
emails.
it.
So how
We should have been an email.
we need to really quickly just get the balance of the meeting versus the emails, because it's, as the CM, you know, it's very important that we have this meeting, and you know it's very important that this email goes out, but you will send an email out saying please respond by 15th. Someone is seeing it by the 25th. It's so, how do you, I think my question still goes back to the same thing, which is how do you get people to understand the timelines, because timeline, the cost, it all ties together. Is it by just clear objectives? Is it by contractually, like, you know, having clear clauses on this is what you're supposed to do? Because I know that works on contractors having contracts, but not many people are having consultant contracts. So
Let me speak from personal experience.
Yeah.
So in the same way, in any institution or country, like, there's anything that brings law to order. I think for any project, like at the very beginning, you should have, can I call it your laws? I know we call them the project plan, project execution plan.
Yeah.
So it's a document, or rather it's an explanation of how you need to run different things, because there'll be so many things, even the meetings and the emails. Sometimes we are accused of setting up so many meetings and they should have been an email. Yeah, but I think at the beginning you agree, do we need this meeting? How often do we need this? So it's like having your own statute or law on how you want to run the project. And time to time, if people deviate, you're reminding them. So clearly, you are if there's a query, you're supposed to respond to it, say, in
48 hours.
2 days. So I think that's the only way. Like, you need to start from somewhere and then slowly get people into it. And I think we all know, like, when you're forming any team, there'll be always so many different stages of it. Like, the first stage will be, I think it's the storming. People are clashing into each other, you know, like different personalities, and then slowly they norm. The norming, then forming, and then people start performing. So there will be different stages, but I think the beginning is where you need to get
critical. Okay. What's your experience with consultants contracts, especially in here, Kenya? Like, is that something you implementing more often, or
just bringing it back bringing for the consultants contracts and generally contracts? I'll bring it back to that first project where the architect was telling us. So for them, they've come with the drawings. So they've done the tendering. They've done the tendering. So you have the client, you have the selected contractor. So now this is the day where you're going to sign your contract. So you have your FIDI credit book, you have your BOQ, you have your drawings, your set of drawings. When they got the client and the contractor, the client said, "I'm not signing." So they shook hands with the contractor. And then my architect was there looking flabbergasted, looking at the QS, who was also flabbergasted. But it's just an example. And that project actually went all the way to success. Little or no claims. So again, contracts, relationships, nature of the projects, kind of the people who are contracting. But I think it's something that, depending on the value of the project, it's when you start, and the relationships and the stakeholders involved, it's when now you start thinking of the kind of contracts, whether you need them. Because sometimes people value relationships.
I
don't know.
I understand what you're saying, because most construction it's a clique. So you find that most parties in the construction have worked together, or they know each other, or they're actually friends, or they're actually family.
Small industry.
Yeah,
Nice.
so you'll find such situation, but I always advocate that let's have the contract and not need it.
Yes.
Because also the kind of dispute you get in construction are so major, and there are things that can be really easily preventable. That takes me to my biggest role, I think, as a CMA, which is risk mitigation.
Yeah.
Literally, you as a PM, I would expect you are there to foresee and just ensure this does not happen. So that getting a contract signed feels like the best way to mitigate.
Yeah, actually, you're right.
Because if we shook hands, what?
Well, I
You're
think
right.
when I was feeling jittery about that slightly, the shaking of hands, because for me, with a contract, it's business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The contractor wants to make some profit.
Yeah.
The client, or rather the project owner, wants to build something that will get them some money in the future. So the contract is there to take care of interest, everyone interest. So you would rather have it but not need it. It's there to
But then
take care of interest.
in that case, they'll be like, "Oh, you PM with your paperwork."
No, let me jump in. This is the aspect of the contract. Again, it's important. It's critical to have. It's critical to have, because, as you've put it, the contract has the roles and obligations of all those people. So there are places where the contract have not been done in a right way, so it has a lot of gaps. So even that contract in itself brings room for conflicts. But then if you sit down, if you're competent, and then again you're not crafting a contract alone, you're crafting a contract with the input of your architect, with the input of your QS, in such a way that you've enumerated all the scope, what is the roles, the obligations. Even if it's for the consultants, you've sat down with the consultant and the client, and you said, architect, these are your roles, these are the responsibility. You've gotten the expectations of the client well understood. So that now brings something else, which I believe is one of the key aspects of being a good construction project manager: documentation. Because you need to have everything documented, all the expectations, because at times you have your client, there's usually a meme going around that has 3 people singing. It's a very weird, I'm sure you've probably come across. So they're singing in tandem. So you have someone who's dancing really, really well, and then someone who's dancing in a very funny way, and then there's somebody, by the time that moves all the way down, they're 3 or 5 steps behind. So usually this is the client's expectation, and then in between is probably what the design team have, and then this is the reality of the budget, the client's budget. So being a construction project manager, if I was to put it as the bare minimum, which is what is the most important, there's the people management, but also you have to be very keen on your documentation. A full stop a comma or a full stop in the wrong place makes a huge difference in, let's say if it's in a BOQ, if you move the position of the full stop from one side to the other by 1 figure, it changes the value of the project. If you had a project figure done as 1 million, and then you move the 0 to this other side, like 1 million.00. You move the full stop one side, it becomes 10M.
Or even
an
time.
error, or even time,
You're supposed to finish 2024, you have it 2025.
Exactly.
That's a whole year. So.
And you have
you can think it's not a big deal until the contractor is delaying, and all knew it was 2024. The whole team knew. And then they'll come and be like, but the contract says
20.
So in terms of, just to wrap this up, what I'm hearing is, majorly you need to have your documentation, you have to have your communication, you have to have your people management, you have to have your risk. I think on the issue of contract management, we'll try and do a session on that, because it feels like there's so much to unpack there. But just for our viewers to have this information, ACMK is actually planning a CPD workshop for the graduates, mostly contractors and construction project managers, that's going to deal with just contract management and claims management. How do you deal with that? What does that even entail? Because for most contractors, actually, they're used to just getting the job, you agree the amount, you agree the timeline, and you get into it. And then later you come and you have so many issues in terms of timelines, in terms of claims the client is claiming from you, or you need additional funds or time from the client and you don't know how to go about that. So we'll be having that session. You can check out the social media pages just to see when the dates are, the charges for that. But for this sitting and for this podcast, we're definitely going to do something on what contract management entails, because you mentioned FIDIC so casually. And it's we need to just get our viewers into that, because that goes from construction even into other projects people are doing. So do you feel like there's any other challenge or major role that we've not handled for construction managers, or we can?
There's always something, of course.
I don't know how we've not mentioned anything on procurement.
I wanted to say that there's always something. I mean, like you getting the best resources, be it time and materials, there's a lot of buying or procurement that needs to happen. So that essentially is also like really critical, because you want to have the best team. You want to have the best team. But again, remember, within a certain time and at a certain budget. So it's a management on its own as well, even for materials. I think even for the person building, even like knowing the number of fundis you need to have. I mean, you don't. I know some of us have had fights with contractors, and you're like, if you want to finish plaster in this room, don't tell me you're going to work with this one person. That's procurement essentially. Okay. So it's the resources need to be procured properly and in account of how much needs to be done. So I think it's a full circle. So the pizza needs every ingredient, some vegetables, some meat.
Thank God we've not gotten to the pineapple of it. So it seems like there's just so much into the CM. But just to try and wrap up this first episode, from your experience, what makes a great PM? What are the greatest qualities of a PM? How do you assess that this is an amazing PM?
This is where we get to praise ourselves.
Okay, go ahead. Use your cameras. Use your cameras, guys.
So, I think I can start with that. One of the greatest, what makes a great construction project manager is, it's very simple, it's very minute, but it's listening. Learning to listen. You will listen to the fundi when he tells you that this particular beam may not work. The fundi has a lot of information, has a lot of knowledge. So that's one of the major things that I think it's critical, learning how to listen, learning to listen to everybody. And then now it moves to the next thing, which is being open to ideas. It's more fundamental, because it's the roles of a construction manager is more of a fundamental, like what makes the individual, because when it comes to the technical, technical, we study the same drawings, we learn from the same schools, we've all been taught the same thing. But what makes you as a fundamental, the aspect of listening, being open to ideas, and then having discernment, knowing when to get angry, knowing when to put your voice to the top, knowing when to calm the situation down. So that's one. And then now the last thing is being in a place where you're able to learn to follow up on things. If something is mentioned today, you need to have it well noted down and follow up on it again within the right timelines, and then being resilient. Because if you call somebody today and then they talk to you badly, it doesn't make you the job has to get done. So you call that person again and say, I'm sorry. Well, I know you are angry, but this thing has to be done. So I still need the drawings. So in a nutshell, being a good listener, being open to ideas, having the wisdom of discernment, and then being resilient. So that's more of what makes a core, because the technicals, we all taught the same thing.
That's almost sounded spiritual. Discernment.
Well, I think building on that, being the voice of objectivity, because again, like we said, people will be people. Everyone wants to safeguard their interests always at first. So you have to be the voice of objectivity. Whatever needs to be done, it's objectively what needs to be done. It's not personal. So that voice is much needed when everyone is all about, this is what I need, this is what I'm bringing here.
Yeah.
And then I think also building up on what we said about documentation, that remains the heart of any project. And if it didn't get recorded, then it didn't happen. So you really have to be very articulate, even in the way you say things, and also just record them. I also think problem solving is one of the big ones. Looks like everyone is just bringing problems to you, because obviously you're not designing, you're not doing the numbers, but when the numbers are low or they've gone high, they'll come to you. PM, this is happening.
Why?
Exactly. So I think problem solving comes a lot, and even just helping the people to actually bring in the solutions. It's not just about the problems, the solutions. And I think that goes with a lot of critical thinking. Sometimes you just need to take a step back and, look at it strategically. What, like you were saying, as part of risk mitigation, what could go wrong? What can we do now to avert that? So, yes, so pretty much that's it. Voice of objectivity. At anything and with anyone and everyone. And then also just be really good at how you address matters and how you document them. Problem solving, critical thinking. And then I think the biggest for me has always been emotional intelligence.
Okay. I'll look for you. We do one for that. Because I feel like there's a lot of meat in that, because pressures really go high in those boardrooms.
That's true.
You're like, it's just the house, guys. So I'll just to conclude this, thank you so much, guys, for coming. It seems like we've barely
scratched the
surface. Tip of the iceberg.
There's so much we can discuss in all those roles. There's so much we can get deep into to understand exactly what is this, the technicality of it, and the social bit of it, because this is management. It's coordination, it's communication, it's direction. So thank you so much for coming. So maybe you can give us your final words based on what we've discussed, based on what you know about CM, just something to close it up.
All right. In a nutshell, for those watching, CM is, as I said, it's the cheese in the pizza. It's people say, why do I need a PM? The question should be, what happens if I don't have one? And of course, you will have a lot of disintegration, you'll have a lot of things, miscommunication. So, and also there's some PMs who actually are the problem in terms of they miscommunicate and they disintegrate. So for you who's for the people, for the clients, and for the project teams and the consultants, having a PM on the project. For the architects, is not a competitor. It's a place. It's somebody who makes life simple. I call myself Mjengo man out there, but the truth is, I am the quote unquote in Kiswahili mtu wa mkono wa the project. So if the project needs, so this is the project. My client is not the individual, but my client is a project. I work for the project. So if something needs to be done for the project, you go to all ends to make sure that it happens. So if somebody needs to be pushed, if something needs to be done, you adhere to it. So that's my parting shot. So for construction project managers, our role is making sure that we are there for the project and not for individuals and not for the personalities. It's the what's best interest for the project. Yes, and that's my parting shot. It's been an amazing session so far. I didn't know we could actually have an interesting conversation on what you do from 8 to 5 or 8 to 12 or 6 to so it's quite amazing, and I look forward to adding more value, adding more insights to the conversation, and demystifying the whole role of construction project managers in a way that it makes it easier for the clients, it makes it easier for the consultants and the project teams to, and for the students to see that what they're looking forward to in school is not, it's not a small thing. It's something that has value to the industry.
They're not site farming.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah. Kate.
Hate to end this. It's been amazing, I think for me, basically, like you're saying, I think construction management generally, okay, for someone like me who loves it, I'd easily say anything you do actually in a typical day, there's a lot of management that goes to it. So for you to now have a certain project, like you have in mind, you have $1 billion somewhere and you actually want to spend it. So if you're project managing your typical day-to-day tasks, even setting up your own living room, even your kitchen. You have placed certain ingredients somewhere. That's managing. Like, you're managing how much time you want to, to take in getting something from here to there. So for now to have something more complex, so that's where your project manager comes in, or your construction manager comes in. So they help you manage, from A to B, or rather the full cycle, like from when you need that started planned,
Inception.
up to when you want it get done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been fun. Hope to be back to the ACMK podcast, but really enjoyed this conversation.
It's been amazing.
Thank you so much, guys,
Let's
for
go
coming
back to
in.
site.
And deal with the challenges we just discussed.
And enjoy them as well.
The two of you have noted that you really love what you're doing. That's amazing. That's great. To the guys who are watching us or listening to us, I know my guests have thrown in a few technical items here and there. They have mentioned a few things so casually. So under the comment section, if you would let us know what more do you need elaborate on, what more can we talk about in this podcast, please feel free to let us know. Remember to subscribe, share with your friends, those who are in construction, those who are not in the construction, and like this video. So thank you very much. That was the first episode. I hope to see you for more. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon.